Hi there, it's Frank here again, and today I'd like to share something. I hope that it would encourage you um, to move, to take action, and be a better version of yourself. There is no comfort in your growth area. When you try something new for the first time, especially when you're trying to develop new habits, to change your mindset, to be a better version of yourself. When I first developed the ability to cut my own hair. And yes, I did my own haircut. Going through that phase because of a need, and I just had to make use of out of what I have available. It basically forced me to develop a new skill. And now I can do my own haircut. The important lesson in there is that sometimes our growth is dependent on the choices that we make, and the choices that we make is dependent on the things that we believe, perceive to be true, and accept, and from there we take action. And something that's so great about what my boss recently shared is that you actually have to deal with the things that's uncomfortable, and sometimes the very things that blocks us or stops us from our tracks is our doubts. I want to encourage you, if you find yourself in a situation where it's uncomfortable because you have to adapt and it's something that you have to make the most out of this what you have, no matter how inadequate it could be. But when you take action and you do it in a consistent basis, that is where growth takes place. That is when you develop new skills, new talents, and find new strength. I remember from that conversation in a meeting with my boss, he said, there are two important things. I would actually make it three if I can add to it. He mentioned about mindset, and then he mentioned about heart set. While ideas and knowledge are good, it is our action based on on the knowledge that we've learned is what counts. It is not about how many books you've read and how much you've known and how many audio, inspirational, educational, and intellectual sources that you've listened to. But it is what really counts is the action that you will take, and how fast you act on that is what counts. Because ideas, principles, um and anything that goes along those lines are good. It's great, but actions is when it happens. That is where everything counts. Because if you refuse to take action, then what becomes of the knowledge of something new that you or interesting that you've just heard? It's nothing. What counts is when you act upon it. That's why I heard somebody once said that the measure of a person understanding what they have learned or read or just heard is in how fast they're able to implement and make those changes and adapt to it. So, the moment I want to encourage you, make this as a habit. Whenever you hear something new, interesting, and you know for a fact that it is beneficial to you in the long run, act on it right away. Act on it. Do not wait for your circumstances to be perfect for it to happen. Make it happen by taking action. Ultimately, it is your decision. And I know that, it is really difficult when your mind is convinced, but your heart is not. And that's where the problem kicks in. When you want to do something, but your heart is not set into it, it's it's not going to happen. You're just wishfully thinking. And I suppose that's the reason why John Maxwell said, in order for you to make a difference in your life, or to progress, or to be a success, if you would call it, it is in you taking immediate action after hearing or getting the information. You need to realize the power of intentionality. Because if you do not have any intentions, when you hear something good, compelling, intellectual, and inspiring, unless you take action, it doesn't count. It counts for nothing. So the moment that you take action and make it work for you, that is when it counts. That's the reason why businesses don't care about, well, your motivations are good, and anything that you'd have to say might sound nice, but at the end of the day, it's the numbers that count in business. It is your statistics. How many deals have you closed? How many sales have you closed? Why do you think it's important? And don't get me wrong, it is absolutely horrible. I absolutely detest it when people just look at you as a number. I know how that feels. But the thing is, you can't blame them either. To look into something concrete that they can base their judgments, those are your numbers. So, if you're going to ask me, so which side do I am actually taking on? Is it with what I've said that you're not supposed to look at yourself as a number, or I'm just siding on management to say your numbers speaks for itself? It's not, I don't think it's about choosing which one is more important. I think it's about having a proper perspective and a balance to weigh two conflicting values. While I totally understand that you are not supposed to be looked down as just a number, the thing is, the numbers don't lie in themselves. And yeah, I know there are some nuances in between, like it was this QA person's judgment or this person's perception. Let's set those things aside and ask this important question. If you are just one of those people out of 100 or a certain population who has that same situation, but there are a few who are doing things differently and hitting their numbers, I suppose it is time for you to change your mindset and ask the right questions. Like, what different thing are these people doing that I don't do? And what can I do to learn from them? Or what can I change so I can do things better than them? We see, when you start asking the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And when you get the right answers and you're convinced in it and you believe there is something that you need to change, that you have to do, and when your heart is aligned to it, aligned, your principles, your values and ideas are aligned to your emotions, and emotions are very important, and it has to be aligned. Why? Because your emotion is what drives you into action. Because unless you are emotionally driven, motivated, you're not going to take action, right? And that being said, that's why it's important that your heart and your mind is aligned. And if I were to introduce another factor, I would say it is the spiritual side to it. If you ask me, so which is most important? Is it the mind? Is it the heart? Is it the spiritual side? I would say it has to be a balance. You cannot say possibly that, oh, the heart should be set above the mind, because that is a perfect recipe for disaster. And I'm not going to say that the mind should just be above the heart, because if the heart is not aligned with the mind, then it's not going to force anybody into action. Now, what about this third factor, the spiritual side? There are different thoughts and philosophies about the spirit. People have their own minds, they can define it on their own terms. But I would like to look at the spiritual side in the perspective where everything that you do as a result of your heart and your mind being aligned, that is the spiritual aspect. And why am I saying that? That's the spiritual aspect. Because anything that we do as an action is a result of our mindset and our heart set, our motivation, our knowledge, our principles, our thinking, our values, fueled by our emotions, drives us into action. And the things that we do as an act produces results, which could either be spiritual, the good thing, or demonic. If you do things right because your heart and your mind is aligned to do something that's good and it produces good results, it's been put into action, and you do that constantly, then everything that you do becomes spiritual. When your mind has been reprogrammed to think differently, you begin to speak differently, you begin to move and act differently, and you do that in a consistent basis. It becomes a habit, and that becomes, this is actually where the word religion comes from. The word religion comes from either a Greek or a Hebrew word that means it is actually something that you do on a consistent basis. Before I drift off to some place that's going to take me far from the point I'm trying to make, the importance of your mind being set and your heart being set, which drives you into action, and everything that you do that is a result of that is becoming spiritual. And the things that you do on a consistent basis, that is a product of your mind and your heart being melded together, that becomes spiritual. That's the result. So that's why when you say that somebody, oh, he or she is a spiritual person, then I would say, I would ask you a question: what makes them a spiritual person in the first place? I would answer that question by saying it is because of their hearts and their mind being aligned, that translates to the things that they do, whether it is the way they speak or they do things, it becomes spiritual. And that's why for me, it just makes sense that the progression is mind, body, spirit, and soul, because your mind being aligned with your heart translates into your action, which basically affects the physical aspect. But if your mind and heart is aligned to the truth that sets you free, then everything that you do as an act becomes spiritual. And guess what? Everything that you do that is spiritual is uplifting for your soul. So before I want to end this, I would like to quote. So where is all these coming from? Like, where is your basis for me to even accept what you're saying is the truth? Well, I want to encourage you by reading Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12. And it says in there, "For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart." Profound, I know. Deep, yes. There's so many things to explain in this short verse. Now, if you are somebody who listens to The Secret, somebody who uh, reads the book by Napoleon Hill, To Think and Grow Rich, it's not, The Secret is actually not something to be mystified about, because the secret is actually no longer a secret. But I suppose coming up with a fancy name such as The Secret is what entices people to pick it up and read it. And if you like it, I encourage you to do so. Because ultimately, The Secret is based in the written word that is living and active, sharper than a double-edged sword, and that is the Word of God. Which is why I would still go back into the very foundation of everything that I believe in the scriptures. Joshua chapter 1 verse 8. It is very important to meditate on the book of the law, His word. Meditate on it day and night, so we would be careful to do everything written in it. And then there's that promise that you will be prosperous and successful. God bless you. I hope that has given you something to think about and got you encouraged to start something new so that you can progress and change the course and the direction of your life from where you are right now to where you want to be. God bless.